When they are when they are when they are when Claudia. That's good morning, welcome, hello, hi. My given name is Roy Wilson. My Indian name is Itswoot Wawahayo. That means bear who talks much. Welcome to Bear Raven, my Native American cultural and spiritual center. I will show you the Longhouse. I will take you back about 200 years in time in a time machine and see what it was like for my ancestors to live in a longhouse. We will show you the Indian Art Gallery, the Indian Museum, and the Indian Library. But today we're going to show you the Longhouse. You can see the welcoming center gate, Bear Raven. I was named Itswoot Wawahayo. It's bear who talks much. Itswoot is bear. I am bear. I was born in the Bear clan in my tribe. My wife is Raven. And so, Bear Raven, my wife and I, we welcome you to our center. For a welcoming totem pole, all totem poles tell stories. This one tells the story of welcoming story pole. It starts with bear at the top, that's me, then Raven, that's my wife, and then we have Beaver. Beaver controls the flow of the waters of your life and mine. And we ask Beaver to bring harmony and unity to all who come here, the black man, the yellow man, the red man, and the white man. And down at it doesn't matter what their race, their religion, their culture, all are welcome here. The bottom is the salmon. When the first white people arrived here, they soon discovered that Indian people on the Pacific Northwest Washington coast considered the Cowlitz River as the best salmon river in this part of the world. And they called the Cowlitz people the salmon people. And we are right now standing on ancient Aboriginal Cowlitz land. Let us go and see the Longhouse. It is a West Coast tradition that every Longhouse has its logo, that's its name, and named after the clan that lives in this. So this is a Bear Clan Longhouse, and that is the way we Native American people in the Northwest here would paint the picture of a bear. You can see its eyes, its nose, and its mouth full of teeth. This is a Bear Clan Longhouse. And now we'll take you about 200 years in a time machine back and see what it's like to be in the Longhouse. This is the totem pole that welcomes you when you walk in the door of the Longhouse. There you see the eagle, her head and her beak, her wings and her hands clutched in the claws, clutched in the salmon. Below, you're greeted with a wolf. Welcome to my Longhouse. The Longhouse served two purposes for my ancestors. It was both the building we lived in. This was our home. It also, in each village, if you had 1,000 or 2,000 people living in the village, there'd be one Longhouse that's much larger than all the others. And that we would call the smokehouse. Some tribes would call it the sacred lodge. The white man would call it the community hall. And in that one you'd have bleachers all the way down. So this particular Longhouse is representing the smokehouse, the community hall, where the tribe would meet for singing, dancing, drumming, business sessions, or whatever. The house that we lived in There were no windows or doors on the outer walls because that was all beds. The beds that would look like what you call bunk beds all the way down. And there would be two logs about 5-6 inches in diameter that would outline a pathway from that door all the way to the other end of the building. And then logs that same size would go off from that path to that path, designating the living space for each family. Today, we Indian people live like the white man, with the nuclear family. That's just you and your kids, your wife and your kids. Maybe you have auntie or grandma living with you, but probably not. And today, that's the way we live. But if I lived today the way my ancestors lived, it would be with the extended family. That'd be all my brothers, my sisters, their families, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, my nieces, my nephews. For example, from my life, there would be living in this longhouse, my wife and I and my three children who have given me 15 grandchildren, who have given me 31 great-grandchildren, who have given me 4 great-great-grandchildren. That'd be about 55 of us in this one room. And then there would be my brother and his 79 and my baby brother is 63. There'd be about 200 of us in this one room, living in this one large room. No partitions, just our rooms designated off with the logs that set up our areas. And between where my wife and my children were, and over on that side where my brother and his 8 children were, there would be one fire, and that would be the cooking fire from my wife and my brother's wife. And then the next two, another fire. And so, before the white man came here, we Indian people had no concept of measuring the way the white man does, saying it's an inch long, a yard long, a mile long. So how did we tell how big our longhouse was if we met a stranger on the trail and they wanted to know how large it was? Well, we would just simply say, my longhouse is a 7-fire longhouse or an 18-fire longhouse, and you'd immediately know how big my longhouse was. Because with a 7-fire longhouse, there are 14 nuclear families living there as an extended family. If it's an 18-fire longhouse, there are 36 nuclear families living there. So if I was living that way today, there'd be about 200 of us in my family living in this one large room. You may think, oh, Grandfather Roy, your longhouse must have been one of the biggest. No, tiny, tiny, tiny. They say that Chief Sealth, his real name was Chief Sealth, but the white man named him Seattle. They claimed that in his longhouse, there were between 500 and 600 people living in there. There's one longhouse that's now disintegrated, but was over 900 feet long. How would you like to live in a room that big? So this is a little tiny bit about the longhouse. You may wonder, well, why are there so many people in your longhouse? Well, today we live the way the white man does. We're only allowed to each of our men to have one wife. But my ancestors, an Indian man could have as many wives as he could afford. And so if he had 10 wives and each had 5 kids, each wife had 5 children, he'd have 50 children. And then you got all the other aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, nephews. Wow. It's easy to have 500 or 600 people in your longhouse. So this is a tiny, tiny bit about the longhouse and the way we lived in the longhouse. This is a totem pole that I carved of raven, and you see her long beak. The way you can tell the difference between birds on a totem pole, the bird you saw on the other side of the eagle has a sharp beak, comes down and comes back up. If that beak would hook, then it would be a hawk. If it has a long beak, it is a raven. So here's raven with her beak, and I put a cedar hat on her head. Then she has her wings and her breast with feathers. Below that I carved a turtle. You see, I carved a raccoon, and above that, a bear.
And what's the symbolism of those?
The raccoon is a very, very curious animal. Bear is also very curious, but there's no animal more curious than raccoon. So when we have raccoon medicine powers, we are very curious. We ask many questions. And it's that curiosity and asking questions that causes us to become very creative. And so we can ask for raccoon power to become more creative. As I mentioned out at the welcoming totem pole, Beaver is the controller of the waters of your life and mine. Below this, I carved, after carving Beaver, I'm in the process of carving a bear with a kid in her tummy. I have a lot of work yet to do on this pole. You'll notice the style of carving on this pole is slightly different from mine. This pole was carved by my friend Carl Jurgens, with a whale up at the top and a mama bear with twin cubs in her tummy. This totem pole was carved by my friend Dan Jacobson, an enrolled member of the Clatsop New Halem tribe in Oregon. On the top, he carved a beaver, and then an orca whale, and you can see her tail whipped over, and he put a salmon in her mouth. On this totem pole, this was a bare open pole when one of the tribal council members of the Cowlitz tribe came and says, "Okay, grandfather, on that pole I want to see a bear, and I want to see her taking in the whole pole, and I want to see her holding a salmon in her paw." So I said, "Okay, Mike, you'll get that," and I started carving it the next day, and I carved that pole for the bear. Up on the top of this pole, you click it sun mask. I saw a symbol of that on Facebook one day, about a ½ inch in diameter. I took it I had it blown up to a larger that size and began carving it. I had it roughed out when my friend Dan Jacobson said, "Oh, grandfather, let me finish it." So the two of us together worked on that. Down below it, later on Facebook, I saw an owl about a ½ inch diameter. And now you can see the pattern I had blown up, and from that I'm now in the process of carving an owl. Up here on the beam, you can see carvings. Over here at the far left are 4 stripes that represents bear claw marks on a tree. Then an arrowhead, then a spear, and now the eyes. That represents the eyes of the cedar people are watching you while you're in here. And you may ask, who are the cedar people? The cedar people are our ancient Indian ancestors. They've got their eye on you while you're in here. This is a grandfather drum covered with a blanket. It is tradition, an Indian tradition, that you always consider the sacredness of your grandfather drum by keeping it covered with a blanket. When you get ready to use it, you remove it. When you get through using it, you cover it up again. This particular grandfather drum has an elk hide on this side and a buffalo hide on the other side. You will find that grandfather drums are used in Indian powwows. They are very sacred. We also have our hand drums. I may have 50 or 60 people in here, and with our hand drums we sing our songs. Hey!